Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program to help you stay curious, connected, and informed, and as always, live and in real time. This conversation, like all of our Lunch Update programs, is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, and with help from our Accelerate sponsor, Baker Tilly. As we always do, we record these and then we make them available on our website, madisonbiz.com. So later this afternoon, you can go in there if you something you want to revisit, rehear, rewatch, or something you would like to share within your networks. We certainly appreciate it and make it available for that purpose. Today is Veterans Day, and I do want to say on behalf of the Chamber and so all of us and this community, thank you to our veterans for your sacrifice, for your service to our country, and your dedication to keeping us safe. It is appreciated. Coming up, we will be joined by Dane County Sheriff Kalvin Barrett, who will discuss his first 6 months in the position, goals for his term, and his department's support of Dane County businesses. Before we get to the sheriff, let me just do a quick update from the Chamber. You can join us at our next big night out, which is Wednesday, December 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. This is an event that is free for all Chamber members, and it takes place at Capitol Ice, home of the Madison Capitals hockey team. And we look forward to welcoming you to the Capitals Eagles Nest for drinks and plenty of great networking. And you can even show off your ice skating skills at an open skate from 4 to 4:30. Thanks to our sponsor Catalent, who is making it possible. We hope to see you there, both to show off ice skating, but also to be there to just reconnect and connect with new people. And you can register now at our website at madisonbiz.com. Now to our guest today. Kalvin Barrett was appointed the 53rd Sheriff of Dane County in May of 2021. Originally from San Diego, he came in 2000 to attend UW-Madison and play football for the Badgers. He earned a sociology degree from UW in 2004. Sheriff Barrett then moved to Texas and became a science teacher and a coach. He returned to Dane County in 2009 and began his career as a peace officer, starting as a deputy in Dane County's Sheriff's Department. And then in 2011, he became the first Black officer in history of the Sun Prairie Police Department, and then served at the Wisconsin State Fair Park Police beginning in 2019. Most recently, Sheriff Barrett was an instructor at Madison College and a faculty director of the Criminal Justice Study program. He also leads the defense and arrest tactics instruction at Madison College Law Enforcement Academy. He completed his master's degree in criminal justice in 2020. Thanks for joining us, Sheriff. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. So I guess first question out of the gate, you were appointed by Governor Evers, which means you actually applied for the job. Why did you want the job as Dane County Sheriff, and why now?
Yeah, now was the time. I felt though I was having a high level of influence on our profession of law enforcement on the academic side of things, in the criminal justice system at Madison College, I really felt my level of influence was being limited. I saw a lot of social unrest. I saw our country and our profession going through a very difficult time. And I felt that my experience as a Dane County deputy, as a science teacher, as a police officer, and on the academic and training side of this profession, as well as my life and professional experiences, I thought if I could bring those together to find common ground between two of the largest areas of my life right now, and that is my profession and that is my personal life. And finding that common ground and bringing understanding will really help us move forward in regards to our relationship between our criminal justice system and our underrepresented communities.
I've heard you use the term peace officer, and in fact, it's in your bio that I just went through. What does that perspective bring to the department? Talk to us about the word peace officer.
Yeah, so it was something that I learned when I was going through my master's studies, and it was talking about, peacekeeping criminology. And that's when it first came to me several years ago and studying about that. But preparing for this position as sheriff, I was reviewing the state statutes here in Wisconsin. And in chapter 56, it defines the powers and responsibilities of the sheriff. In the first line, it says our duties are to keep and maintain the peace. So when we talk about peace and understanding the importance of a title and what that means to the individual, but also how the community sees that individual, titles matter. I see a law enforcement officer as doing one thing, and that's enforcing the law. And I believe that's what our communities, especially the communities that don't trust us, or are critical of us see us as doing one thing. I had the opportunity to ask many people throughout the county, well, what do you think a police officer does? And the top two answers was write tickets and arrest people. But in reality, we do so much more. As a peace officer in Sun Prairie, I was a big brother, I was a big sister, I was a marriage counselor, I was a mental health crisis worker, I was a paramedic, I was a firefighter, I was a dog catcher, I was even a weather watcher. If you didn't know, it's police officers that are trained to go to the highest point of their jurisdiction with binoculars and identify, tornado forming clouds. That's how the Weather Channel gets that. So I felt that the term law enforcement officer kind of pigeonholed me as a person in regards to what I really do, but also how the community sees us. We are here to keep and maintain the peace. And does that include arresting? Absolutely. Does that include citations? Absolutely. But the mindset of how we view our job, how we view ourselves, but also how the community views us is key with us moving forward.
One of the things I said, why now? And I appreciated this idea that it was the constellation of moments for you and where you were in your life. But also I meant why now because you did it during a pandemic, right? I mean, you took over this role in the middle of a pandemic. Certainly that pandemic has impacted every aspect of life in Greater Madison throughout the world. The globe has been entirely impacted by it. But I wonder how the pandemic has impacted or changed policing and your change to policing. What have you seen just over the last 2 years as far as changes in your department, but also in the industry as well?
Right, absolutely. We're seeing that over the past 2 years, there are indeed practices that we can do as a profession that doesn't necessarily always have to rely on arresting. We can still keep and maintain the peace and maintain public safety without actually physically arresting and placing someone in an incarceration facility. And so we have been able to learn out on patrol that there are different types of responses that we can do that don't include an arrest. We have different, varying powers that we have in regards to our discretion. We can write warnings, we can issue or refer charges, which still accomplishes the same goal, but doesn't exactly involve physically handcuffing and incarcerating someone. We understand that there are racial disparities in our criminal justice system, and that includes the bail system, that includes other areas of our criminal justice system. But if we can prevent people from going through that trauma, which leads them down the path of continued crime, and we can eliminate that while still maintaining accountability and providing justice to our victims and survivors of crimes, I think that's the key. So I think that's one of the main things that we learned as a profession, that arresting everyone for a crime doesn't necessarily lead to public safety.
Yeah, I have a child who was thinking about being a peace officer. It was something that she had on her short list when she started college of professions that she would be interested in. And she did a few ride-alongs and has taken some coursework, but now she's not so certain anymore, right? She's just not, and some of that can just be you evolve as a person. But I think some of it is the moment too. And, something that I think is probably relatable to many people watching today who come from the business community is, an understanding of what's happening around talent. We know there's talent gaps throughout our entire community, that everyone is struggling to find people. My guess is it's not any different than when you're thinking about your department. And so I'm curious as to during the pandemic, and then certainly some of the racial awakening that we've had as a community and as a society over the last 2 years, what are you seeing when it comes to the recruitment and retention of talent inside your department?
Yeah, we're seeing a drastic, decline in the overall numbers. We're still getting the quality applicants. We're still hiring quality deputies and staff here at our sheriff's office, but the overall numbers aren't there. For example, in 2009, I was with the Dane County Sheriff's Office, and I put in for the Madison Police Department, and there were around 1,700 applicants for 12 spots for that academy. 1,700. We fast forward to now, we're seeing the numbers are maybe around 100, 125. Does that mean we're getting less quality of officers and deputies? No, but we just don't have the overall numbers or that drastic, interest in it. And there's a variety of reasons that can lead to that. But we are still getting the quality. We just don't have the quantity of the individuals here. We're seeing that with the shortage of the positions that we have, especially as we're trying to evolve as a sheriff's office.
How's retention? Are you seeing people that in this moment, are they doubling down on their ability to be a peace officer, to make change, to see them as part of changing systems where we have inequity? Or are you seeing people who are saying like, I don't feel appreciated, or I don't, my role has changed, or the perception of my role has changed, and therefore I want to do something different. How's retention going?
Yes, retention is going okay. There are those that are starting to realize that there are other, they're taking their careers, their professional careers in different directions, and it has because of the past year and a half. It has been tough. It's been tough for all involved in our criminal justice system, and sometimes people start to reevaluate themselves or their priorities, especially when it comes to this pandemic, and saying, hey, what is really important to me and my family at this moment? And does my career and my future have law enforcement in it, or a peace officer in it, or do I need to start something now? So we're definitely seeing those that are starting to move on to other areas, but we are still keeping the great majority of the great deputies we have at our sheriff's office.
Yeah, I mean, it's heartening to hear that we're still getting great quality when the recruitment side. But in business, we use a term. You played football, so I can't off the top of my head come up with the exact equivalent, but to either be a hockey or soccer term of we just need more shots on goal, right? When you're talking about recruiting, you want to widen the funnel, get more people in so that you can diversify and create a more equitable, more inclusive workplace. My guess is that challenge that business feels, particularly in Madison, is no different for you as the leader of our sheriff's department. I'm curious as to how you differentiate yourself as a department for the recruitment, retention of diverse talent, diverse officers.
Yeah, so it's really it's a change, and something I learned from one of your events is not just to think outside of the box, but to think beyond it. And so that's what we're doing here with our philosophy, is that the typical mindset coming in to sheriff's offices, we're going to go to criminal justice career fairs, we're going to get our name out there, we're going to be on criminal justice television shows and just get our name. But we are starting to change that focus and starting earlier, investing earlier in our youth, investing in our high school auxiliary sheriff's office programs, investing in scholarships that are providing those with the education they need to get the minimum requirements to be eligible to be a Dane County sheriff. So there's so many different things and different ideas that we're going. We're not just going to criminal justice careers. We're going to social work careers. We're going to teacher careers or career fairs, so that we can bring and really not just diversify our staff as in our physical characteristics, but in our culture, but also in our life experiences. And I think that's the biggest key for our success moving forward.
What do you see as the biggest challenges as in this community, both currently and then looking ahead to next year and what we hope will be the post-pandemic recovery? What do you think the biggest challenges are?
I think the biggest challenges are, I feel that a lot of emphasis has been put on our criminal justice system as the end all be all to solve all of the issues we see in society. But in reality, we're just a small piece of that puzzle. We may be a larger piece, but in reality, there are other realms of our world that dictate the success of a community. And that includes affordable housing, career-based employment, proper education, all of these different things, affordable healthcare, being able to be diagnosed when you do indeed have a mental illness that is affecting your behavior, and getting that treatment before you get into our criminal justice system. So it's really going to take a totality, a total approach for us all as a community to move forward and really change and really, reverse a lot of the effects that we've seen from this pandemic period. I control, the criminal justice system piece here at the sheriff's office, and I assure you, we will do our part to ensure that everyone that happens to come, within our care will have the life skills, resources, and programming they need to be successful, and which will lead to a reduction, or which will lead to, a reduction in recidivism, which will lead to a reduction in the crime rates, which leads to an increase in public safety.
If you go back a decade, maybe even a little bit more, the headlines we saw were disparities in incarceration, disparities in arrests, disparities in citations, disparities in education. When we fast forward, and we haven't solved most of those, if any of those, that we hope we've made progress, but we certainly haven't solved it. And even progress is questionable. But a place we have made progress is I look around the region. and I see diversity within the leaders of our law enforcement or policing agencies. And now there's a number of leaders of color that sit in the top seat in law enforcement, including yourself. Our chief judge in the juvenile court is a man of color. Our district attorney is a man of color. It seems to me that there's opportunity in all of that, and there's also risks in regards to systemic change. How do you see it? I mean, you look around and we see diversity, and is there a worry that there's an expectation that's placed on a solution that maybe is more rapidly deployed than what we have seen over the last decade plus? So I'm curious how you see both the opportunity and the risk of where we find ourselves today.
Right. I definitely do see it as an opportunity and as a risk in that a lot of times we're put in difficult positions where we are given leadership positions as people of color or from an underrepresented community. And there's the expectation that things are going to change magically. Like, all right, we put this person here and everything's going to be fantastic now. It still takes work. It takes time. Changing culture, changing a philosophy, forming that philosophy takes time, but it also takes resources. And that's what I'm seeing in our leaders of our police agencies and our sheriff's offices. Yes, we do have people of color that bring their life experiences and their professional experiences. We also need the resources. We need the budget. We need the training. We need the position to be successful. And sometimes we can be set up for failure by giving us a position, but then not supporting us with a supporting cast that can help us be successful.
Hey, Sheriff, I think we maybe you said there's something cover your mic, maybe that we lost a little bit of your audio.
I'm sorry, is that better there?
A little bit better. Can you maybe just use your policing voice?
Here we go. I'll use my deep voice now. So definitely what we really need is we really need the support. We need that budget to be able to put individuals in position so that we can focus on proper training. I was very blessed that our Dane County board actually passed and provided us with 2 additional positions. Number 1, a human trafficking detective, and number 2, a training deputy. That's huge. This is what we need, right? Our community is saying we need to help. We need to be able to train and change a culture and shift from that warrior mindset that we've had over the past 25 years in our profession to the guardian mindset. And how do we do that? It takes training and it takes resources. So we definitely need to be put in these positions, but we need the resources to be successful in these positions as well.
Let's switch to the jail. You've been outspoken and critical of our current jail and sort of the operations within it. Why do you think now is the moment that improvement's needed?
Yeah, so in coming into this position in the sheriff, I just want to tell this story and make this very clear. I'm big on telling my why before I really get into my decision making, right? So I'm going to get personal. Back in December of last year, I had the opportunity to be. I didn't have the opportunity. I had COVID-19, and for 15 days I was isolated in my house in a room in my office that had a big glass door. Where my family could see me and stuff. And though it was the worst pain that I've ever felt in my life, ever, the hardest part of having that, it was being physically away from my children and my wife, not having that human contact, putting my hand up against that glass and my daughters putting their little hands up against me, and me sitting there crying and sobbing in pain and no one there to physically touch me. So before coming into this position, I realized the importance of human contact. So when I look at our criminal justice system and my philosophy as a sheriff, I'm not here to build something to fill it. I want to make sure those that are within our custody are those who pose the most significant threats to our community and that they can get the help that they need and be rehabilitated to have a warm re-entry back into the community. So when I came here as the sheriff, as I worked here in 2009, the city-county building was old and outdated. It was built in the 1950s, but also it was built and designed to reflect the views of society at that time. If we look at the 1950s, in the early 1950s, that was before Brown versus the Board of Education. That was before the Civil Rights Act. That was before Loving v. Virginia. So our society's values viewed incarceration to be harsh and to punish. Our views on society now is not about that. It's really about rehabilitating individuals and providing them with the skills and the resources they need to be successful in the community once incarcerated. So we have a building that's outdated in design, but it's also unsafe. We've had residents try to break out by chipping through the wall, kind of like an Andy Dufresne, Shawshank Redemption type. It has a lot of blind spots where deputies can't see into the block. But also, we have rusted pipes there. We have poor air quality, which leads to an increase in mold. But also, too, it doesn't have the programming space where we can sit our residents down and provide them with the life skills like parenting inside out, like the literacy link, like Just Dane, Just Bakery, all of these skills and resources. Over 30 programs we have for our residents, we can't provide them all because we have limited space. So this new facility isn't about building a new shinier facility. It's about providing a safe and humane facility for those who are within our care. Everyone on this call, you and I are one wrong decision away from ending up incarcerated here. My philosophy in regards to a peace officer is the same in that we now no longer refer to our residents as inmates. Why? Because language and titles matter. And if we're going to treat them humanely, we want to speak to them and refer to them humanely. But it's hard to do that when you have an environment that's screaming, I hate you. And that's what that 1950s era style facilities on the 6th and 7th floor of the city county building says. It's not safe. It's not humane. We don't have medical beds. We don't have mental health beds. And if we're going to move forward and really have a facility that matches the values of our community, we can't keep putting people in the 1950s era style jail and then say, once you're released, go be better. Don't do this anymore. We're setting them up for failure. And that's why this push for this consolidated facility is really the focus on what we can provide and how we can rehabilitate, not just saying we have a shiny new building. It's about being humane and treating those who are within our care with dignity and respect.
So I think what we'll do, Sheriff, too, is I'm going to talk a little bit lower so then everybody else can turn up the volume, because it sounds like there was some difference between our voices too. So I'll try to keep my tone down. You keep your tone up, and then people should be able to turn their mics or their headsets all the way up, and hopefully we'll continue to have this great conversation. I'm curious as to, people think about law enforcement, peacekeeping, and they don't really think about businesses or the role that it plays in the economy. But I'm curious what you as sheriff hear from businesses around the county.
Right. Well, number one, we hear that there's a shortage, right? There's a shortage of workers, and that they're willing to partner with us to come into our facility and really start training our residents so that once they are released, they do have a place where they can start a career or start employment. So definitely hearing, number one, that there's not enough individuals out there to be hired. Number two, there are some concerns about the social unrest and what can happen if there is, if the community starts to respond to different things going on throughout the country and here in the state as they did last year. There's some concerns there, but also too, the big thing is diversity and inclusion, right? Diversity brings individuals in, but how do we keep those of diverse backgrounds is what I'm hearing as well. We're also hearing, especially in our rural areas, as well as our urban areas here in Dane County, is, there needs to be more officers. There needs to be more deputies. Where are they at? If we look at our road and our patrol here in Dane County, we have over 1,200 square miles to cover, and we have 4 traffic deputies. 4, that their only job is to focus on traffic. There's a lot of roads in those 1,200 miles, including the Beltline. So there's a lot that we have to do. Our minimums on the road is 10 on first shift, 12 on second shift, and back to 10 on third shift. So there's really not a lot, and our communities and our businesses are asking, hey, we need more officers. And it's also not just officers driving around the car, but community-based officers and community-based deputies that have the time to spend to build the relationships with the business owners and find out what they need from us to be successful. So those are really the areas that we're seeing from our business owners here in Dane County.
I just want to encourage you to keep speaking loud. So what do you want businesses to know about the department? I mean, again, it's a two-way street. Like, what are you hearing? But also, what do you want businesses to know about what you're doing and, what's going on within the agency, within the department?
Number one, that our ultimate goal is public safety. That is what our number one goal is, public safety through community engagement. And we want to make sure that we're getting out into the community, we're listening and learning and listening to you business owners, but also to you community members too, to find out where can we be more successful? Where can we be more efficient? The title going from inmate to resident came from me connecting with the community. Going to the group Nehemiah called Man Up on Tuesday nights. That's where that came from. Our second goal is to reduce recidivism through jail-based programs, right? And through jail diversionary programs that are designed for rehabilitation and not just reactionary punishments to hold an individual in a harsh condition. And third, we want to have a sheriff's office and staff that reflects the diverse communities that we serve. And that's not just race and gender, but that's gender identification, sexual orientation, cultural background. So there's so much more that we can do. And that's what I really want businesses to know. Public safety, community engagement, reducing recidivism, and diversifying those who are serving you.
I appreciate all of you joining us and sticking with us. It's obviously, you can see why we wanted to have the sheriff on. It's a great conversation that I think it's timely, and it's also an opportunity for all of us to hear more about those squad cars that we see driving and those peace officers wearing brown that particularly if you're in the city of Madison, you maybe not interact with as much, but outside of Madison and certainly within the Huber Center and within the county's jail, they are the front door and the face of of the interaction with law enforcement and peacekeeping.
Good.
You know, something that we often hear is there, and this had just happened to us, and we were in Washington, D.C. Last week, and I sat with a Republican congressman from outstate. And before we could even start talking about Madison's economy, greater Madison, the county's economy, he wanted to talk about what he perceived as rampant crime and homelessness. And, you know, in his view, State Street had been irreparably damaged. And it's not just something that we hear from others around the state. We hear within our own community too, is there is a perception that Madison and Dane County is experiencing more crime. You know, what's your take on that? I mean, you see the statistics, you live it every day. What do you say to those that perceive our community as less safe today than it was before?
Right. Well, it's important that we understand that perception is reality for us all. And, you know, there's been times I've been in contact with community members that talked about something a bad incident that occurred in their neighborhood. And by the time we got into the conversation, I found out that incident happened years ago, 7, 8, 9 years ago. But it still was perceived to that individual as happening recently. And so with that trauma, that ongoing trauma has lasted all of those years. So we do have to realize that the perception a lot of times is reality, but our data, our numbers and statistics are showing that there's not a significant increase in crime. I know Madison is seeing some up and down numbers in regards to their violent crime versus their property crime, but we're not seeing a huge uptick in actual crime happening in Dane County in the areas that we patrol. We are seeing an increase in the reckless driving on our belt lines and our roadways. But yeah, it really is. It does appear to be that way. But I would really focus on the numbers and the data and the statistics that show that there's really not this huge increase or uptick in crime that we perceive it to be.
So looking ahead, what do you want to get accomplished? I mean, you know, what does Dane County and this community need to accomplish?
Number one, we need to realize and understand that the people within our care are people, and that they need to be treated with dignity, humanity, and respect. And that though one incident may have landed them in our custody, it doesn't define who they are or who they will be in the future. It just defined one moment in their time. And like I mentioned earlier, we are all one wrong decision away from ending up here in this facility. But what we need to do and work together is identify what are ways that we can work together as a collaborative effort and as a community to help those that are within our care. Not once they're in our care, but before they even get to our care. Because a lot of times people have to come into the criminal justice system to get the mental health diagnosis or the medications that they need, and that's not appropriate. I was reading something online one time, and it talked about, we need to pull people out of the river. Right? And I'm in the process of pulling people who are drowning out of the river as they're going downstream. The key and what we all need to focus on as a Dane County community is going up that stream and finding out why the person's fallen in the water in the first place. before they even get to me. And so that's where I think our focus is. That's where we need to go. And I am all about providing life skills and resources for those that are within our care so that there is a warm re-entry back into the community so that when they do go back, they have jobs, they have a career, they have a place to stay, which lowers their propensity to commit another crime. And that's the ultimate goal, is reducing recidivism, which leads to a reduction in crime rates, which leads to an increase in public safety.
I was a week, 2 weeks ago, we had our annual dinner, and one of the things I enjoyed was when I was on stage, I looked out and I saw you in the audience, and it was nice to see you there and nice to see you engaging with the business community. I also noticed over your left shoulder, so our right-hand side of the screen, I think I see Dr. Ron Friedman's book, Decoding Greatness, right there, which was one of the books that there it is. I'm curious what you took away from the dinner with, you were there with 950 business leaders. I'm just curious as to what your takeaway was, having been your first.
Yes, it was, number one, thank you for allowing me to be there. It was a fantastic event. It was a fantastic atmosphere. I was able to meet so many business leaders and future leaders of our community there. But walking out of there, I've never felt so inspired before in my life. I felt inspired to be great. I felt inspired to do better. I felt inspired to think not just outside the box, but beyond the box. And the book was just a perfect complement to that. Because as soon as I left the dinner that night, I actually came to work in this office and started working. That's how inspired I felt to implement the change that I want to see. And really reading the book and learning how to decode success is just a beautiful thing. They talk about in that book finding those who have been successful and then working backwards from the end result to identify where we can incorporate what they've done to be successful and incorporate in our lives. And I see that now where I'm actually writing down the speeches of those who I look up to, my mentors, Barack Obama. I write down his speech and learn how to figure out how he puts things, where he puts humor, where he doesn't, where he drives that. And I think that was the beauty and the benefit of being at that dinner and really realizing that you all at the chamber are changing lives. You're changing our community. And those 950 some odd people that were there at the dinner was just the start, because we all went back to our own respective businesses and we're doing and implementing that change and that influence over 600 Dane County Sheriff's Office employees. So I just wanted to thank you again. It was just a great opportunity and it was really a moving night, and I look forward to next year.
Yeah, well, thanks for being there. I, much like you, we did get feedback that some companies turned it into a book club opportunity where they went out and said not only were they inspired, but wanted to others in their leadership to hear it as well. Speaking of leadership, the final question, I'm going to end us a little early just because I know the audience is having a hard time. I will remind the audience, you'll be able to re-listen to this once we get it posted. We'll see what we can do in post-production about trying to work with audio. But hopefully on the when people can rebroadcast it, they'll be able to get a little more volume to the audio. But since we were talking about leadership, I am curious, Sheriff, what did you learn about yourself during the pandemic, particularly around leadership? What have you learned about yourself that you could impart that wisdom onto the rest of us?
Yes, I learned, number one, that family is number one, right? My family is number one to me, to my success moving forward. My daughters, my wife, their support and their love. I also learned as a leader that we grow the most outside of our comfort zone. I was great at Madison College. I had summers off, I had holidays off, I had weekends off. Don't tell Dr. Daniels, but I had Fridays off. It was great. 4.5 years of educating, teaching, but also time off. But I was in that comfort zone. Everything was good, right? I knew I had my lesson plan set up, but I felt that I had to get outside of that comfort zone to grow. And being sheriff was a big step. But when I took that big step and got outside of my comfort zone, I've grown the most in that time. So as a leader, I have passed on my philosophy of getting outside of your comfort zone, because you will learn and you will grow the most when you're outside of that. And that's what I feel it takes to be a great leader, especially in our profession.
Well, Sheriff, I want to say we didn't know each other before you became sheriff, and we're just getting to know each other. And sometimes when people ask me what matters in leadership, I use the word thoughtful. And when I first started using, I would say, well, that person's a thoughtful leader. And some of the response was, well, I don't think that's really one of the top priorities for leadership, but I view it as one of the top priorities for leadership, and particularly in the profession that you're in. And I just want to say, just listening to you today, hearing you talk in public, getting to know you, you are truly one of the most thoughtful leaders that this community could ever have been blessed with. And so I want to thank you for putting your name in. I mean, I asked in the beginning, well, why would you put your name in? But for putting your name in, what you're saying rings true to me, that you could have continued to live the good life and what you were doing before and continued a great career. But the fact that you chose to serve means something. And it's important that the rest of us get to know what you bring to this community and what you bring to this profession. And also, I want to say, it's Veterans Day, and so it's a day that we honor those that wore the uniform. But it's also important that we remind those that wear the uniform today, whether that's the military uniform or the uniform of a first responder, that we appreciate you. And we know that there's trials and tribulations, and we've been up and downs in this country. But it's important that we tell you, and that you tell your deputies, and you tell the rest of your staff, that we as a community appreciate what you do every day to keep the peace and to keep us moving forward. And so with that, Sheriff, I want to thank you for spending time with us. I want to thank the audience for being with us. We apologize for some of the audio challenges. We'll see what we can get fixed in the recording later this afternoon. And I hope you'll join us next time for a conversation. And until then, be well and do good. Thanks, everyone.